Well, thank you everyone for persevering for our own Zoom bombing, our own meeting. Dara, have you assessed if we have quorum yet? Or Ed?
I believe we have a
Yes,
quorum.
we have a quorum.
All right, we'll start with introductions, and I'm gonna call on folks and then make sure everyone's able to hear. And so maybe I'll ask people to share your favorite spot to spend time in August on the peninsula. And that could be the Olympic Peninsula or the Kitsap Peninsula, or any of the sub-peninsulas they're in. How about let's start with Wendy with Jamestown Slalom Tribe.
Could I please ask to go second or third so I can finish what I was writing? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Susan Matthews with Lower Ola Slalom Tribe. I don't think Susan is here. Ryland Bochop with Macon Nation. Ryland? No, I don't think Ryland's here. And Marty Allen with Skokomish Tribe.
Hi, I'm Marty Allen, Skokomish Tribe, transportation planner. My favorite place to spend time is Lake Cushman on a hot day.
Nice. All right, I don't think Tracy Parker is here with Squaxin Island Tribe. With Clallam County, Mike French.
Hello, Clallam County, Mike French. I just did the Storm King hike this week on Lake Crescent. Beautiful views, very intense hike.
I knew you were going to say Lake Crescent. All right, Kate Dean with Jefferson County.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Dean, Commissioner with Jefferson County, and my favorite spot to be is in Daybob Bay.
In the water in Daybob Bay?
Yes, because it's warm.
Oh, nice.
Don't tell anyone.
I wanted all these tips. That's why I picked this check-in question. All right, is Christine Rolfus with Kitsap County here? I don't think so. All right, Randy Netherland with Mason County.
A little secret place up by Lillywop where I ride my motorcycle, take my daughter, and we walk out on a little no-name creek and have picnics.
Right. All right, is Brenda Bontroy Johnson with Bainbridge Island here? I don't think so. All right, Vicki Grover with Bremerton.
Good morning, everyone. I hope, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. My favorite place to spend time here in Port Orchard, where I live, is at Banner Forest. Thank you.
Thank you. And username Emnery, I'm sorry, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, I am Monica Nerney. I am the Program Services Manager for the Squaxin Island Tribe, and I have replaced Tracy Parker. She left us for a position at Chehalis. My favorite thing to do is we like to go down to Walker Park along the waterfront there and have picnics and let the kids play on the play equipment.
Thank you. And thanks for speaking up there. Thanks. Sorry for missing you. Let's see, where were we? Let's see, is anyone from Jeff here? Forks with Jeff Gringle. Is Jeff here? Don't believe so. I'm next on the roster I'm looking at, Lindsay Sherman Warren, City of Port Angeles, and PRTPO Chair. We have with Port Orchard, Beck Ashby. Hello.
Hello, and I'm glad to see everyone this morning. And if I'm out walking, I really enjoy any place up the Dosey Wallops. It's one of my favorite hikes. But if I'm on the water, I really enjoy Hammersley Inlet until I read that there's sharks out there these days. Dick, you may need to do something about that.
Thank you. Ed Stern with Poulsbo.
Morning, Lindsay. Ed Stern, Deputy Mayor. Paulsbo, my favorite place. The first week of September is going to be Atlanta, Georgia, to go with my engineering staff and accept Project of the Year from the American Public Works Association.
Is that the roundabout or something else?
the roundabout and the connectivity and the underground tunnel and the transit and the water and the new housing development, transportation-oriented development. Which part of that do you want me to expand on, Lindsay?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we should have that as the agenda. Get ready to add that to the agenda. Ben Thomas, Port Townsend.
I'd say anywhere around La Push. Any of those beaches, 1, 2, or 3.
Is Rachel Anderson here with Swim?
I am. Rachel Anderson, Deputy Mayor of Sequim, and August, I really struggle with the heat, so my favorite place to be is in my house with the AC in August. But early morning or late night, just walking around Cary Blake Park.
Going to La Push is like getting AC actually.
Yeah, there's a big air conditioner off the water there, right? For Shelton, George Blush, or anyone else for Shelton. All right, I think we're missing Shelton. And for Clallam Transit, Brendan Meyer. My council colleague is missing there. Jefferson Transit, Nicole. Oh, Miranda, you're here.
I am. Nicole is out on a family emergency. So Miranda Nash, Jefferson Transit, Finance Manager. August is audit season and the start of our budget. So I'm going to say that I kind of agree with Rachel that but mine is going to be in my backyard relaxing. So I'm not doing much recreational activities during this month.
I'm glad you said backyard and not your office, but
yeah,
that's what I thought you were about to say. All right, with Kitsap Transit, John Clausen.
Good morning, John Clausen, Kitsap Transit, and I just discovered a new favorite place for August most recently. Sorry, Amy and Miranda, but we just finished our state transit conference in Tri-Cities, and as part of that conference, we had a competition of bus operators and maintenance teams, and Kitsap Transit came in first for the maintenance team, first for the cutaway bus operators, and first for the 35-foot bus operators. We missed the 40-foot by, didn't quite get into the top 3, and then we took the overall champion for the state conference. So as I said, my new favorite now is Kennewick in August.
I would never have guessed that. That's a great one. Mason Transit, Amy.
Yes, hats off to you and your staff, John. That was pretty awesome. Congratulations. Kennewick, Tri-Cities area is not my favorite place to be in August, but I do love kayaking up at Lake Kokanee and then following that up with a little stop in Hoodsport for some Olympic Mountain ice cream.
Nice. Port of Allen, is Judy Scott here or is anyone else from Port of Allen here? And Port of Bremerton, is Gary here?
Arnie is here. And
Oh,
Dave
Arnie.
Ford is here from Kitsap County too.
I need an updated roster. I apologize.
I guess I'll go because my favorite spot is really Sunrise over in Yukon Harbor, just south of Manchester.
You're all making me realize I don't have my Kitsap Peninsula geography down very well. All of these great spots. We should put this on the map. All right, Port of Port Angeles.
No, don't put it on the map. No, please don't.
Anyone from Port of Port Angeles? Chris? Or anyone else? All right. And Port of Shelton, Dick, are you here? Or anyone else from Port of Shelton? All right. And then anyone from WashDOT? Is George here? Yes.
Yeah, George Mazer, WashDOT Olympic Region, Multimodal Planning Manager. And as a WashDOT person, I have to say my favorite place is any roundabout that we have on the peninsula. But no, I will take any trail, the harder the better. Appreciate all the great trails on the particularly the Olympic Peninsula.
You're gonna have a lot more roundabouts to choose from soon, right? How about Joanne?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Joanne Schuler, Assistant Region Administrator for Olympic Region. I'm here for Steve Rourke. I'm going to go with Mount Walker hike.
Good one. All right. Did I miss anyone? Anyone have the chance to go? Wendy, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Wendy Clark Getson, and I'm the Tribal Transportation Program Manager for Jamestown Slalom Tribe. And my favorite place that's nearby is going at low tide to the Dungeness Wildlife Refuge, which today in history is a very important day for the tribe, that they are signing an agreement with Department of Interior to take over the management of the entire refuge and the Dolly property that is next to the Olympic Discovery Trail along 101.
Very exciting. Thank you. And David.
Good morning, David Fort, Kitsap County. And, naturally, it's all the unincorporated area of Kitsap County.
I love it. All right. Michael, sorry for missing you.
That's all right. I think I'm going to pick your town and say that my favorite part of the peninsula is getting on the Black Ball Ferry and heading to Victoria.
Good one. Anyone else? We also have Ed and Farah recovering from our self-destructive Zoom bomb at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you for getting us all here. And thank you everybody for persevering to stay in the meeting. I assume we're behind schedule, but I'll figure out how to speed us up and try and finish by our planned noon adjournment. So just any changes to the agenda? Ed, did you want to put on a summary of Poulsbo's?
This Ed or staff Ed?
I didn't understand that.
I thought you were talking to Ed on staff with Farah. I wasn't.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to talk more about Poulsbo's?
Well, if Michael will
awards?
back me up. So the roundabout project, the least of it is the roundabout, but what's visible is that tremendous partnership with the tribal community on public art. Number one, the roundabout, as we all know. Number three would be the multimodal pedestrian, and to a degree, wildlife has no respect using the tunnel under Highway 305. Then the great water detention pond, the planting 7,500 bushes and trees, then working the way up the hill to a transportation-oriented development, 65 homes in conjunction with a Kitsap Transit facility at the base there. And then that road continues in 2 more phases and will connect with the far side of Poulsbo in front of all the schools, thereby opening up and creating multimodal walking, pedestrian, as well as car access to homes, schools. And it's got all of those flavors. Michael, anything else on the American Public Works Association criteria?
I think you hit most of it there. I'd say that you've been involved for many years in the planning of that project. It started in '92 with our first transportation plan, and we were thrilled with the participation and partnership we had with both the tribe and with WSDOT as in culminating that, and the local communities that partnered in the funding for the SR 305 corridor that also contributed money towards our project. So a lot of partners, a lot of people over the years, and it's a great project. We're pretty thrilled to be able to have pulled it off.
And to David Foote in Kitsap County, and give a shout out to Andy on your staff for helping support the additional allocation of Connect Washington money on some of the supply chain delay, COVID pandemic era issues, David, and the commissioners.
Yep, spectacular partnerships all around.
All right, thanks for that update. Any changes to the agenda? All right, without objection, I'm going to consider the agenda approved. Consent calendar, we have minutes from June 20th, 2024, and state fiscal year 2024 quarter 4 invoice approval. Any changes to the consent agenda items? A motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And any further discussion? Any objection to approving the consent agenda? Hearing none, that is approved. And our next,
Second,
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, who was the second on that, please?
Mike was the
Mike
second.
French, Clallam County.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was looking down, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then request to WashDOT around defederalizing HSTP funding. Sarah, is this to you?
Yep. So this is, we're sort of proactively asking WashDOT when they award funding to RTPOs like PRTPO next spring to do the update of the Human Services Transportation Plan. This is a request to WashDOT now that when they make that decision, if they would please make those funds in state funds instead of federal funds. And that is because PRTPO is really not set up to handle federal funds. 4 years ago, when this came up the last time, Kitsap Transit stepped in and sort of served as an intermediary, but that's not, as I indicate in the report, not sustainable going forwards in that way. And so this is the time in WashDOT's process to notify them. So that's what I've brought to you as a draft letter. Alternatively, and maybe this is something we put in the letter, is if they feel that they are unable to provide PRTPO with state funds, that it must be federal funds. Maybe we could ask WashDOT to be the agency to administer the grant instead of asking Kitsap Transit. So, but what I've presented to you is just a letter requesting that they use federal state funds instead of federal, and then we can modify that if you like. So that's my brief, and the request that I'd be looking for you all is your approval to either modify this and send it, or send it as is to WashDOT from PRTPO. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. I see Wendy.
Thank you. I had a suggestion based on what I'm reading in your cover letter, the introductory memo. Would it be a good point to bring up how much we received last time around and whether or not that was sufficient to accomplish the task to the desires of the executive board? And also suggest that now that we're looking into the future of doing the update, how much funds would be the correct amount of funds to request, so they can keep that in mind when they distribute and cut up the pie.
I haven't considered asking for a different amount. The $80,000, I believe everybody, I think all the RTPOs got $80,000 last time, but I can look into that. If you'd like, I could look in and do some research as to how much everybody else got and what that process is, if that's something that the board wants to look into. And then if we wanted, I mean, like most RTPOs, we kind of operate with what we have and we scale the process to that. We've never conducted a scoping process to determine if money was no object, what would we do differently? I wouldn't have a different number to offer at this point for that, but we could look into that.
Thanks, there. I see back.
Yes, I would just like to mention that it was with great effort that we were able to get those funds moved to Kitsap Transit last time. Randy Netherland and I sat in at least 1 or 2 different meetings with DOT and the Human Services folks in Olympia, and it is really critical that we not get federal funds. We were at the point last time of not accepting any money until Kitsap Transit raised their hand and said they would help us. And during that process, it's my understanding, and John could add to this or confirm it, but it was also not an easy process for Kitsap Transit, who has a department that handles federal funds. It just became a little more complicated than any of us anticipated. So it is really critical that we get this moved to state funds or figure out how to create our human services plan without the additional money.
Thank you, Beck. I see John.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a terribly complicated effort on our part. We're set up to deal with that, but I think the thing that is most frustrating from my perspective, and we'll be talking about it here soon, and that is because of those dollars being federal dollars, PRTPO was obligated to create a Title VI plan. Kitsap Transit currently has an FTA approved Title VI plan. It continues to be updated. But the ruling was because ours does not cover Jefferson, Clown, and Mason, the PRTPO, which is in my mind nothing much more than an interlocal agreement amongst all of you to communicate and plan together to develop a Title VI plan. And even though we've got it and it's moving forward, it's yet another effort that was put onto the PRTPO to do that, had this not been funded with federal dollars, would not have been a requirement. And please don't mistake my comments about being against the Title VI concept. Absolutely. But it's just the workload that has been put onto the PRTPO that is really not necessary had this been done with state dollars.
Thank you, John. So we had some discussion of the draft letter, which is in the packet, PDF page 33. There is a requested motion to authorize a letter from the PRTPO chair to WashDOT requesting that future human service transportation plans be funded from the state revenues. If it's okay, I would entertain a motion to authorize that letter, well, with modifications based on the discussion today. Would anybody be willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Wendy, second by Ben. Any further discussion? Hearing none, is there any objection to authorizing a letter from the PRTPO chair to WashDOT requesting that future human service transportation planning funds be from state revenues with possible modifications of the draft letter that's in the packet? Okay, no objection. I don't think we're going to bring that letter back to the group, so Sarah and I will work on that. I just want to make sure that's clear for everybody. Is that all right for the timeline there?
Yes, that's great. And I appreciate your willingness to sort of make it your letter too. I ran out of time to do that beforehand, so perfect.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by George with WashDOT. Any introduction needed?
I don't think much, but George, just because everything got all mixed up there, do you have a green share screen button?
That I do. I've never shared on Zoom before. I'm a team sharing expert, so we're going to learn together.
It'll be straightforward for you.
Yeah, right. Okay.
George is a team player.
We have full confidence, George.
Okay.
George, my goal is to make you look good technologically, so I've done my part. You'll be just fine.
Okay. Am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay. And Tara, if you would, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see anyone raising hands. Just interrupt me at any point.
Okay. And would you like to be interrupted throughout, George? Is that what you prefer?
Yeah, as I'm going along, it'll be easier.
Okay. We will. We'll keep an eye out. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm hoping you see the inlay little table there. That's kind of Microsoft Word. I'd like to start with that. I see a head shaking. That's great. So what I'm presenting today is what's going to come before you. There, I don't know the exact date, but it is the full 2025-2030 STIP package for WashDOT projects. This includes new projects that are new this year and holdover projects. There'll be other projects that have recently gone to advertisement or been fully obligated and have kind of dropped out of the STIP. So this is not the full activity that you're going to see, say, the next few years, because there's projects that are obligated and already dropped out. So in summary, the total projects that we'll be going through, there's 51 projects, of which 12 are new. And those are spread across about an equal number of fish passage and preservation projects. And then there are 12 safety and mobility projects in there. Now, interestingly, it's about an even split between projects that have full funding and projects that only have PE and right-of-way. So overall, 24 of the 51 projects have full funding. 27 of the projects are PE and right-of-way only. And then looking at the big dollars, I hemmed and hawed over whether to include this because there's some big missing pieces out of this. So what I can say overall is with the STIP funding, there's 511 million, the majority of which are in fish passage and safety and mobility. And then in terms of the total cost on this, it's a big, big question mark because there are two big pieces missing out of the cost estimates. Complete streets compliance costs are missing for all the preservation, and that's a pretty big number we're suspecting. And PE and right of way, the 58 million. So, it's right now safety and mobility says 250 million, maybe add 400 plus million, 400 to whoever knows how much million for full SR3 Gorse construction. So if we were to look at the total number here, this adds up to about a billion. I think a 1.05 billion is the total cost. By the time you add in complete streets and Gorst, maybe add another 700 million on top of that. We're probably talking 1.7 or 1.8 billion just project costs in the STIP. Majority of that unfunded. So big picture, that's kind of what we're looking at here. No questions? I'm going to minimize this screen and we'll go to the GIS and look at the individual projects. Okay, so you'll say, George, right off the bat, there's more than 51 little dots on here. You said there are 51 projects. So what I'll say is a lot of the fish passage, a project is one bundle, but for the purposes of mapping, each site is shown on here. So the difference is on the fish passage site, in particular, say whiskey, it shows as one line item in the budget, but there's 12 different little fishies on here. So that's why you see so many more individual sites on there along SR 112. So first off, this is what we're seeing is all projects on here, kind of the distribution of those. And we break it out. First look at all the fish passage projects. Again, you can see that's way more than the 20 that we had before. And those are predominantly along US 101 and SR 112. And I'm going to need some help here. I think we have SR 3 and 305 in here, majority of the fish passage projects. The preservation projects, we actually don't have all of those mapped here. I kind of realized as I was doing the summary here, a couple of big preservation projects that are funded are not shown. Those would be the US 101 projects roughly between Squim and Port Angeles that have been the subject of a lot of discussion of late. Those aren't shown on here, but the remainder of them for the most part are. And then our improvements and safety projects. Predominantly, some big ones along SR3 are the ones that get a lot of the attention. The remainder of the improvement and preservation projects, of the 12 projects, there are 8 safety projects, of which 7 are roundabouts. And then there's 1 median barrier project here along US 101. But these dispersed little dots you're seeing here are the 7 roundabout projects. And then there's the project Belfair Bypass, and then Gorst in this area. So that's kind of the big orange color you're seeing there. So that's a thumbnail view of the entire picture. What I wanted to show also were the new projects that are being added. I had my numbers correct there. There are at least half of those were safety and improvement projects, a variety of roundabout projects. The Kingston Ferry Terminal, the Gorst project is added, needing cable barrier and SIMDARs. So these are all projects that have been talked about for a long time, but are finally making it into the STIP. On the preservation side, there's only 1 project being added on the preservation side. And then fish passage, there are 6 individual sites on the Fish Passage that are funded or being added to the STIP that'll be going before you. And I did also have a subset. I was going to show projects with construction funding, because again, we have about half of the projects are right-of-way and PE only, about half of them are fully funded. When I looked at this, I realized we didn't have some of the preservation projects on there. Those were not shown correctly, so I'm not going to show those right now since it's an incomplete list, that particular layer. All right, so new projects, we'll go back to all the projects. Hide those. Okay. Our preservation projects, there are a number of a handful of chip seal projects, a number of bridge painting projects, particularly further out along US 101 in Clallam and Jefferson County, that are PE funded only. We do not have construction funding for those bridge painter projects. Some work at the Hid Canal Bridge on the preservation, and then I did point out the big project. The majority of the funding added for the STIP are the US 101 paver projects between Sequim and Port Angeles, which are unfortunately not shown on this map. And then on the Fish Passage side, we have the Whiskey Bundle, which is everything along SR 112. And then the majority of the other projects are spread across US 101, across all the different counties. Many individual projects on the Fish Passage, and that's going to be the majority of the program for the foreseeable future, is Fish Passage. But the big question on this is 2/3, I think, of what you're seeing there do not have construction funding or are underfunded at this point. So the number we had before, out of the Fish Passage, only 6 of the 20 are fully funded. 14 of the bundles do not have full funding at this point, or PE and right-of-way. So we've got about a $500 million gap in Fish Passage just in the PRTPO region, which is going to be a major part of the next legislative session, is kind of coming up with a plan for the Fish Passage. So that's a big picture. I suspect there'll be some questions here. And Wendy, I think you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to embellish one of those things that you said about only 6 Fish Passage projects are fully funded in the PRTPO region. A list that was created by WashDOT's project delivery team identified that some of the new projects that meet the habitat gain requirement and were not on the original 2013 culvert injunction list are clustered around Discovery Bay. So we're looking at we're trying to use our imaginations right now to bring back a Hood Canal coordinating project that's been talked about amongst salmon restoration planners for a long time, is the Snow Creek and Salmon Creek underneath Highway 101. That's a tremendously expensive project, and one that could be a real development to the whole peninsula region. And so, yeah, there's some more information that needs to be discussed, of like, if you had to wait like Port Angeles, Lincoln Street versus Discovery Bay, which ones are more costly? They're all costly by all means, but there's more to the story here, and I think it's just being developed now, of what kind of improvements are we going to see around Discovery Bay.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good point. What we're seeing here on Wendy, on this particular graphic, are the 2030 injunction list site. So there's, if we talk about the needs that aren't in the STIP, the needs go probably in order of magnitude beyond the numbers we're talking here. John?
Yeah, George, then I don't want to get this into a political discussion, but I do want to recognize that we have this initiative that's going to affect the Climate Commitment Act if it's successful. Do you have any idea how many of these currently funded projects would be affected if that was approved versus, I guess, future? Or do you know at this point?
I have not seen a breakdown to individual projects from the CCA. I know that we have a large impact on any active transportation projects. A lot of that goes through grant funding down to your local jurisdictions. There would be a lot of impact on that. Joanne, I'll ask you to chime in here. I think you might be seeing more specific numbers. It might be more in your bailiwick.
Yeah,
Of
George,
which
actually,
programs are most potentially at risk?
I don't have anything to add, honestly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that, John. But it's a healthy chunk of funding.
Well, I had an opportunity to listen to both Chair 5, the House Transportation Committee Chair, and Senator Leas from the Senate Transportation, and they were certainly trying to, I guess, project the future if that was successful, and it sounded pretty grim, but I didn't know if it got down to the specific project level yet. So thank you.
Other comments for George? Questions?
Can I ask John to clarify what he meant by pretty grim? Is that polling on the issue itself or just projecting on a negative outcome, or both, John?
Well, their projection was that if it was successful, it's going to have a devastating impact on any available funds for the transportation projects. And they had indicated that as of now, they're significantly short in being able to do all of the fish passage improvements, even under what the court order had indicated. And it was more of a, we're not quite sure what we're going to do if that's successful. So I was just trying to get it down to the specific project levels.
Thanks, John, for that clarification. Kate?
Yeah, I was curious if you could explain, and I know that, you know, this is a complicated question, but in just in kind of simple terms, if possible, how the prioritization for the fish passage projects has worked. You know, so if 6 of 20 are funded, how were those 6 decided upon versus the other 14?
Yes. Kate, that decision kind of comes several degrees away from the region and away from the region planning office. So I don't really have much insight to those discussions as to what progresses when. Obviously, project readiness is also, there were decisions made many years ago about how to sequence the projects in. So unfortunately, I don't have more details than that. And I apologize, I see my internet connection is coming in and out at my end, so that I don't know if my
George, your answer here was good. I
Okay.
only noticed it a little bit. So far,
Okay.
so good. Thank you. Thera?
Yeah, I know if Christine were here, she would want to ask this. George, would you share with us just what you know right now about the study that that you all got funding for the Hood Canal Bridge operational analysis, or you know that this might be a great chance to let them know about that. That's coming up too, even though it's separate from the tip. I don't want to, or before you're done, I guess I would just say if you could share that with everybody, that would be great.
I'm happy to talk that now, and then we'll give a chance if anybody else has questions to kind of think of that. So I did get, the planning office got some money from our headquarters to look specifically at the question of the kind of the delay and the queuing and the economic impacts from the opening of the Hood Canal Bridge. So we're in the process of scoping out the work with a consultant to do that analysis. It'll be completed before next June. But we've received a lot of questions about, kind of the roadway operational impacts of that. And that's what we're attempting to answer here in the study. So we're putting numbers on the extent of the delay and some dollars on the associated cost. We'll summarize what's been talked about before in terms of potential strategies, but the intent of the study is to answer the unanswered questions, not to rehash what to do to change it. So I want to be pretty clear on that. So our goal is to answer the questions that many of your jurisdictions have asked us in the past and to fill in those blanks.
That's really helpful, thanks. And I think just based on the board's discussion, that's going to be really useful information to inform, some of their work. So thank you for doing that.
And, Sarah, we'll be working with you and Ed to, kind of scope this through, and anyone else who's interested, because we want to get the information that will be most helpful to your discussions. This is, our impetus on this was the questions you've been asking us. And thankfully, we had some leftover funding at the end of the last fiscal year, and they were able to reassign it to this work.
Terrific. Thank you for taking the lead on getting that.
Thank you. I guess I want to comment, or maybe a question on fish passages. We as cities and counties own a lot of culverts, which are often just upstream or downstream of a state culvert that is subject to the injunction. Our culverts, other than having a federal court order saying so, are probably violating tribal treaty rights the same way that the state's culverts are doing so. But because of the cities and counties not being part of that lawsuit, we're not subject to an injunction, which means our culverts are not being prioritized for funding. Now that culvert removal is underway, I think that the message that we've had from the cities and counties has been, we need a watershed-based approach. We want this work to be effective. And we're at the point now where we've even heard some of our own lawmakers in the 24th LD say, is there really even water in that stream? And so I think it's important that we continue to push for that watershed-based approach to remove the culverts downstream or upstream of these projects that the state has done to make sure that this work is actually effective in the goal of restoring fish passage and hopefully helping the fish populations.
Yeah, we wouldn't disagree with that sentiment. I guess the response is, we are under a court order and we are required to deliver a specific program and achieve certain results by certain dates. We have to continue operating on that requirement. But recognize that, there are now differences of opinion about the best path forward. Watershed versus kind of individual facilities. We have to meet the court order and continue on that path at this point.
Yeah, it's something that the agency, as WashDOT, your job is to meet the court order. I think for everyone else, our job is to think, how do we make sure this work is as effective as possible?
Right.
Go
Yes.
ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I'm also on the Public Works Board, as a couple of you know. And we've been tasked by the legislature on what's called the culvert relocation study. I also sit on the Puget Sound Partnership, where we're trying to coordinate that in the Ecosystem Coordination Board. Representative Theringer tried to do an earmark for a smaller port, and there was some controversy in the legislature about an earmark out of the Public Works Assistance account, which Lindsay now creates a friction point that our traditional infrastructure account is being eyed for culvert. Certainly the sensitivity of the issue of supporting distressed and smaller resource challenged communities on this question is important. But so far, the legislature is looking like they want to rob Peter to pay Paul. So it's getting very complex. And I know Carl Schroeder from AWC has been quoted in the Seattle Times on their reoccurring series on this question. So it's very complex. It's going to come up in the legislature. And, you know, if the climate bill initiative passes, then it's going to be a mad scramble, but it's not good as it stands right now on some of the thinking on this question. It's very disjointed.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you, George, so much for your presentation. Thank you for being here and supporting our region as well.
Thank you. And Ed, I think Ed Coville, I think you were provided the shape files here, or links to those. So if you don't have them, let me know and we'll make sure you get those. But they're already in your hands, what I presented here today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is our 2024 Title VI plan, which was referenced a little earlier. Now we're getting to the work of art, at least the first reading of it. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure. This is that draft FTA compliant Title VI plan that John referenced earlier. What is before you sort of fits that format that's necessary. As we talked earlier, this is needed because federal funds were used to pay for the Human Services Transportation Plan update, and so it was determined that triggered the need for this. So in the future, once this is all buttoned up and taken care of, if PRTPO were to ever have an opportunity to use federal funds, I can't imagine what would cause that, but if they had that opportunity, you're all set to go with the Title VI plan. We submitted it. WashDOT has some new procedures that we had to comply with, so we submitted it to them on like June 28th. They reviewed it on July 3rd. We just haven't received our comments yet. And so what I've sent to you is for review is pretty much it is what they got, except for the cover page being a little different. I had hoped to, the intent of this 45-day review period was so that you would be reviewing a Title VI plan that meets all the requirements. So it's possible that we, just like sometimes with the UPWP, you all review it in April, then we have to have our meeting with WashDOT after your meeting, and sometimes they want a minor change. So we're assuming we'll get some comments, and if we make some minor changes, we'll just make those in here. If there's anything substantive, we would bring that to your attention. But I'm basically asking you for your first read today if you have any questions, and then we will bring it back to you for adoption in October after having put it out for public review. And we would bring to you any public comments that we get, as like I said, as well as any substantive changes. So with that, happy to answer any questions. Or any discussion you might have.
Thank you, Sarah. If there aren't any questions, when do you need comments from us before going to the public review process?
If I could have those by, if you have any comments, if I could have those, I'm going to say, again, I don't know when I'm going to hear from WashDOT. If I had those by September 13th, I would be able to integrate those in, and then with anything we get from WashDOT, and then still have time to get it out for public review and get comments back in time for your mail out. So yeah, let's say September 13th, if you have any comments.
Thank you. Anything else on the draft Title VI plan? First reading, we'll see it again in the final version and approve it hopefully this fall. All right, 2024 consolidated grant process. Back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, we're going to catch up here a little bit on time. This is the briefing memo reviewed for those of you who maybe haven't been through this process before, kind of forget about it. This consolidated grants process that you're about to start hearing a whole lot about between now and the end of the year is a state funding program that's administered by the Public Transportation Division. It's a lot of transit projects, nonprofit agencies, mobility programs, mobility managers, even some school district and local agency programs will apply for funding for projects that help get people to where they need to be. A lot of times we're talking about the kinds of projects and strategies that are identified in your human services transportation plan. So for folks who do not drive, either because of age, income, or disability, that there's a lifeline service to connect them. And paratransit that our transit agencies provide is a really important backbone of that, but it can only cover so much. And so there are a lot of other players who are part of building that part of the sort of the health and human services part of the transportation system. As a part of its process that WashDOT conducts right now, the call for projects is open across the state. A lot of agencies are putting together applications, and they will submit those applications to WashDOT on September 17th. As a part of WashDOT's process, and this is a good thing, but we just got to figure out how to make it fit. They turn to the RTPOs to say, we want you to rank the projects that were submitted from your region. And then the ranking of those projects, I really should call them grading. I'm starting to use that term because I think it's more appropriate. Those grades have a point value associated with them that then get added to the project score. So when WashDOT is looking at all the projects statewide, projects that go through our process and get assigned points will do better than projects that that don't. So WashDOT puts PRTPO in this place. What we've done, the main reason I'm coming to you today to talk about this, normally I would be coming to you in October to lay this out, but I'm proposing 2 changes to the process that we've typically done. So in the past, as a part of your review process, and for years, many years, you all have relied on an outside group of like an independent review committee, and it'll have some PRTPO members, it'll have some other stakeholders from within the region. We've also brought in people from outside the region to provide a separate independent review of these projects and make their recommendation to PRTPO through the TAC and the board as to which project should get an A, which project should get a B, which project should get a C. And so the proposal to you, what I'm coming to you to talk about, is whether or not we would we shortchange our process too much if we relied on the TAC instead of creating an independent advisory body for this process. It is time consuming. It's time consuming for PRTPO, for PRTPO's budget. It's also time consuming for the people who do it. And so if we were able to use the regular TAC structure to do this, we could do it more efficiently for everybody. So I talked to the TAC about this in July, and they felt that they were up to the task of if the executive board would be okay with them doing that prioritization, that they felt that they were up for that task and able to evaluate each other's projects without bias or being unfair about that. So that's one thing that I would point out to you that's different in this process. The other thing that would be different in this process is that in years past, since the pandemic, since the advent of Zoom, we have asked all of the applicants to record a very short presentation, like a 3-minute video, that then we ask all the reviewers, like they get their application packets to review, and then they go watch these little videos. And what we've heard over the last 2 cycles is that people felt like those videos, the folks I heard from felt that those videos didn't really add much to the process. It adds time and stress for the applicants. And then it's also an extra step for the reviewers to go through who are already putting a lot of time into this process. So if it doesn't add value, why would we do it? So basically what I'm saying is that we do kind of the way we've done it in the past, except rely on the TAC instead of this independent group to provide recommendations to you, and then also not include the little video presentation unless you all find it helpful, in which case we'll do it. So that's what I have to present to you. If you have any discussion, I'm particularly interested if you have any concerns, because the way the timing works, I will be coming back to you in October to ask you to launch our process. And what I'd like to do is let any of the potential applicants know ahead of time, sort of what our process is going to look like, so they know what to expect once they submit their proposals to WashDOT. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or hear your discussion.
you, Sarah. And does the TAC already do reviews of like our own projects? Is there a process already in place?
That is their process. And in fact, your transportation alternatives recommendations come directly from the TAC. And that's where they're like, and they are evaluating their own projects next to each other's projects. And it's so as far as bias goes, I don't think we have anything to worry about with the TAC as far as that goes these days.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? This is just the first reading, obviously available for more comments or questions, and it sounds like sooner is better. Otherwise, this process is kind of heading forward with the assumption that we'll approve it in October. Thank you. All right, next up is an update on a statewide RTPO funding issue. All of our poor little RTPOs.
Yeah, this has actually been really kind of a neat process. It's since you met in June and you took the recommendation of your funding work group, we submitted the letter that was approved to the chairs of the other 16 RTPOs and CC'd their executive directors or their staff person, their coordinators. And we continue to hear back. We've heard nothing negative back. Monday, I dropped in on the OCOG board up at for the Okanagan Council of Governments and talked with them just with my regular old RTPO planner hat on. And so the Okanagan Council of Governments is on board, and their chair, John Neal, the mayor of Oroville, has asked to be included in any policymaker collaboration, coordination that goes on. We also heard from the Palouse RTPO, one of their members, longtime board member, also wants to be involved with the town of Rosalia, I think it's pronounced. So, it's been really neat to reach out to folks. The group, the quarterly MPO, RTPO sort of coordination group, statewide coordination group that meets quarterly, they met on Monday, as I indicated in the briefing. We are interested. I'm working with just again, not just on my own because I'm an RTPO geek, so not a PRTPO, but just sort of helping out on my own, not in your budget. I'm working with the executive director of the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Council of Governments and also the Whatcom Council of Governments. We're developing sort of a draft cover letter, a very high level cover letter. And this was actually a recommendation from the executive committee, and everybody thought it was a good idea. We'll develop a high level cover letter that initially the thinking was maybe try to get all the chairs to sign, and then we kind of was like, oh, that suddenly the wordsmithing on that could get super intense. But what we did think that would play well is to have a nice high level cover letter and then let each of the 17 RTPOs attach their own resolution of support to a funding increase. So that's sort of what's shaping up right now. I will have much more detail for you in October on that one, but it seemed to be a reasonable way of trying to get 17 different RTPOs in a very short amount of time. As I say, everybody from the Okanagan Council of Governments to the Puget Sound Regional Council on the same page. So if you have thoughts on that, I'm interested. There's some very wordy language in your agenda packet. I just didn't have time to sleep on it and whack it way down further, but there may also be an interest on PRTPO's part of submitting your own letter to legislators to say, we agree with everybody else who's pursuing this. Here's what it really means specifically for us, very specific to this region, if you think that that's helpful. The other thought I had after talking with the OCOG board is that there may also be value in the 6 or 7 rural RTPOs. If you all wanted to, and that would be something for the policymakers to discuss, maybe if they convene on the side of, would there be something for the rural RTPOs to put their own statement forward? Because one thing we're hearing is that most people don't really know what RTPOs are and what they do. And that's really true for the rural ones. In the urban areas, they think MPOs and RTPOs are the same thing, and that works for them, but they really don't know what rural RTPOs do. And this is a great chance for PRTPO and its other rural allies to have a chance to articulate the value that they provide. So I put that out there. There's all the background. I know, like I said, lots of wordy pages of narrative in there, but happy to hear your thoughts on this and how you see PRTPO proceeding as we go forward on this.
Thank you, there. I see John.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not quite sure where to start, but I guess I'll start with the issue we talked about earlier, Title VI. This is just another example of tasks that is being pushed to the RTPOs. We're fortunate in that the amount of funding we receive is more than some of the really small ones, and that we have Thera to help us and Ed to help us pull that together. But these other folks don't even have an FTE to help them coordinate these efforts. So I think it's very important from the statewide perspective to be able to get the kind of support. Second thing, I really kind of like the idea there you mentioned that was brought up by maybe this body should consider a resolution supporting, and that can be attached to a large cover letter, because I think obviously power is in numbers, and if we get all of the RTPOs that identify this as an issue, I think it will carry more weight when we take it to the state. And then finally, just a couple other things that I would suggest. I think it's important to point out to the state that this additional funding is to meet current requirements. That don't think this is an opportunity for you to add funding and then add additional requirements. I think we need to be fairly clear on that. And then the last thing I would say, as we've learned with the federal funding, make damn sure that what additional funding comes is state dollars, and that they don't funnel federal dollars to this effort, which then brings a whole nother level of tasks that need to be done. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? All right, this dovetails into our next agenda item, looking at the 2025 Transportation Outlook legislative messaging from the PRTPO. So maybe we should jump right to that. And I should also say, I see Christine. I'm not sure what time you joined. Good to see you.
Just popping in.
Okay, great. And then also back during George's presentation, Brendan Meyer was able to join us as well. So Christine and Brendan, apologies for the Zoom self-destruct that we all experienced. That was not just you. It's good to see you. So the Transportation Outlook legislative folio, Vera, please take it away.
Sure. Well, I'll kick it off, but then I think the work group members themselves, carry the better. So this is the time of the year, every year, when you review some sort of early conceptual working language that the legislative work group puts together. The legislative work group is a small subcommittee of board members that volunteer every year. Different group every year volunteers to get together for a couple of times over the summer after the June meeting to talk about what PRTPO might want to include in its legislative folio, highlight this next year, how we might want to frame it up, that type of a thing. Then it comes back to you, which is where we're at now in the process, to consider it, take a look at it. Does this feel right? Does this seem like it's shaping up right for this year? And then based on whatever we hear from you today, we'll make any sort of revisions to that approach and the direction. And then I'll start working with the technical advisory committee in September to make any final adjustments to it that's needed, in particular the project list. So I've included in the attachments, just so you can see what that looks like, just to remind you. It's a very high level list of projects that members put forward that they would like to have featured in the this folio every year, and we develop that with the TAC. At the end of that process, I send a final, what I think is close to final ready draft back to that legislative work group, and then you would, whatever direction you give us today, you will see it come back to you in October as a final piece, a communication piece to share with legislators and then other stakeholders as well, as I indicated in there. Other affiliated associations or members might find what PRTPO's own priorities to be of interest to them for other collaboration opportunities. So happy to answer any questions, but Lindsay, I think really you and your work group members may be better prepared to respond to them.
All right, and I'll add to the big change this year is we've realized that for the future survival of RTPOs as planning bodies, we need to advocate for ourselves to have a sustainable level of base funding. So that is the difference in this year's legislative folio from past years, where it's just about the transportation planning itself for our region. This year's about the funding that we need collectively, as well as some of the issues that we want to highlight with the legislature. That I think gets us to kind of the next steps for us as moving forward this item, where I don't know who else is going to advocate for RTPOs other than RTPOs. We have had success with the Association of Washington Cities lobbyist on transportation, joining one of our work groups earlier, and I think we'll be able to have their support during the legislative session. But that is a call for others with counties or ports or tribes. If you have lobbyist associations, well, you do, lobbyist associations in Olympia that would have on the ground staff, I think that they're going to be some of the best folks to help make sure that this stays in the budget. Although I think that first step is, I don't know if we even have a plan yet to get that item into the budget. So that might be our next discussion with the legislative work group is who do we need to talk to make sure that that 11.7 million is something that people are thinking about at this point.
And Lindsay, I can give a little tiny update on that part of it. I don't have any leads on the legislative budget process, but Bill Fashing from the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Council of Governments is working with the governor's budget staff. And so he's working with the Southwest region person on the governor's staff, as well as a woman named Megan Cotton, who transportation staff might remember Megan when she headed up the tribal, or worked real closely in the tribal transportation program at WashDOT. So we've got some feelers out right now, working on the governor's side, making those contacts and educating them what's going on. But I don't know anything on the legislative side yet.
Yeah. And that legislative work group is going to continue to meet. So if anyone else is interested in joining that team, please do, I think, let Vera know. Any other discussion or comments?
Is the tone, I mean, I just want to know, like, when it comes back to you, it's going to be pretty hard to make major changes. Do you think this sort of opening it up with a little bit of, what it does is it's like, oh, these soundbite things of what values come from this regional planning program, is that a little over the top, or does that feel like an appropriate lead-in? These need to be something that you're going to be comfortable saying, yeah, that this looks like something PRTPO would say.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. And I was involved in the group that's been working on this, and I always enjoy brainstorming with you all. One thing I found a little confusing in this draft, Sarah, I generally like how it's broken out, the whole, kind of first page about increasing the base funding. Second page with some of the other issues that we identified as a group, we thought we were in a good position to support. But I found it a little confusing at the bottom of page 2, where it talks about then this is why you should support adequate RTPO funding, which I understand, but just knowing how I think it's better to keep them in really distinct bites. Even though, these are all the things on page 2 are all things that we talk about in the PRTPO, I kind of I think mixing them confuses it a bit much, that all of these are priorities. Number one priority is our TPO funding, but I don't know, I might consider kind of removing that from the second page just to not make it seem like these are all interrelated. These are all distinct and can be handled in separate legislative action. So I'd rather not mix them.
Any other discussion now, or certainly more edits are welcome. I think there are definitely Ben saw one in the chat.
Great, thank you.
So this will come back to us as a group after going through the TAC, and then it'll be back to this board for final approval in October. So folks have plenty of time to get edits in there. Okay, thank you. Anything else on that topic before we move on to the R2P? How will we adopt a new R2P project list? There are inquiring minds moving on.
Yeah, so this one. So this is something else where I'm coming to you related to the RTP. It's going to come back to you just the way our schedule works. You're going to see this again in October, but I'm wanting to talk to you about it now. We started talking about it in June, and this has to do with the RTP project list. Straight up list of projects that gets identified as the RTP project list. And whether you know it or not, you should know that by virtue of being included on an RTP project list, it conveys an importance to those projects. They've been through, they're recognized as having, gone through the eyeballs of the regional planning organization were on them. They've looked at those projects and they've sort of been looked at in together, like not just in one tip or one plan, but everything all together. So as we're going into our RTP update, we're looking at that RTP project list and thinking about how to be more strategic about the list, about the time that is spent putting that list together, what comes out of it, how to keep it current. And the approach that we've been working on with the Technical Advisory Committee since, I won't say late last year, but it's in earnest this year. And what I'm coming forward to you today with is a recommended approach for integrating the RTP project list into PRTPO's process for developing a regional transportation improvement program every year. And so I'm going to use RTIP and RTP, very close acronyms. I apologize, but that's how it is in transportation. Every October, just like you heard the projects from George, this time every year, the board is seeing the most of the projects that'll show up in your new RTIP come from WSDOT. So every August we'll see that. And then every October, you see the entire RTIP all put together with all the local agency projects in it. It goes through the Technical Advisory Committee, then it comes to you. What this proposal would do is say, as we are building that RTIP, we're also going to be asking our members to let us know which of those projects that they are choosing to include in the RTIP or have included in their own TIP process or capital improvement program process. Which of them would they like to see featured in the regional transportation plans project list? And then they just notify us. We'll have them in the same formats. It'll be an appendix in the RTP. Now in the briefing memo, you see a lot of detail about the SAW database and the STIP format. This was really written for our local partners on the Technical Advisory Committee, the folks who are doing here's how you actually, the nuts and bolts of putting these tips together. We really want to be clear with them. And I'll say that this year, I sort of feel like it's a bit of a prototype because we're trying something we've never tried for the first time. If the format's not quite right or whatever, we'll figure that out in this process and nail it next year. But what you're going to see in October are the projects that the local agencies would like to have included on the RTP project list. They'll be called out separately. We'll be able to present them separately on the website. And very importantly, we'll be able to include projects from our Kitsap partners, because right now in the regional TIP, the front part of this document, we cannot include the Kitsap projects there because they are included in the Puget Sound Regional Council's TIP, our TIP. And so we're staying away from that. Like, this will not interfere with that at all. But the fact that the Kitsap projects go through a process like that enables them to be included in our appendix. as part of our RTP project list. So we'll be able to every year have a current list that shows based on where you all are in your project development, your funding, acquisition efforts, all the reasons why one project might be at the top of the list for 2 years in a row, and then suddenly, the real world happens and something else becomes a higher priority. This will be able to accommodate that and flex with that, reflect the actual changes in project costs that your staff are experiencing, and then help you and the public see in one glance what those near-term priorities are, but then also importantly, benefit our local agencies as they go for project funding, because if your project is included on the RTP project list, it's typically worth some extra points. And sometimes it's just, 2 or 3 points that make the difference between funding and no funding. So that's sort of what we're trying to do with very minimal effort, so it doesn't become a big heavy lift every year. It needs to be easy for our technical advisory committee members, local agency partners to participate in. Needs to be easy for staff, PRTPO staff to put together, needs to be easy and efficient for you to review and approve. And I think we've got something that's going to meet that bill for us. So would love to answer any questions that you might have. I know we do have some TAC members who also serve as board members, and they might have some other insights. But otherwise, what you will see in October is when you receive the regional tip to approve, that's going to be a dual action. You are going to approve the regional tip, and you are going to approve the RTP project list distinctly, very clearly, explicitly within that approval process, so that it's clear that this is your RTP project list, and then our local partners can use it for their citations and references. So that's how it's going to work. And if it plays out this way and with your blessings. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Sarah. So any questions or concerns about moving to this project list format as Sarah described? Great. All right. Moving on to the next item, October 18th, mark your calendars for the first time in the CE era, COVID era, as opposed to BCE, before COVID era. We're going to meet in person, October 18th. Check your bus schedules. Sarah, what do you want to tell us?
Come, please come. I know it's a chunk of time. We have the business meeting up at the first part, so obviously we need a quorum to conduct our business meeting, and we do have some things we must do, but we're keeping that as much as possible to a minimum. I've been working with the executive committee and Lindsay in particular. There's a real strong interest in maximizing the opportunity for interaction and exchange among you all. So we've really got some hands-on. I don't know when the last time was you all got to be around bending over a map around a table, and pointing at things and drawing on maps and all, but that's what we're lining up for you. We're also, one thing I would very much be interested in hearing is we'd like to kick this off with just a short, hear from somebody, an outside voice that's not right here. And, just a 20-minute, I'm thinking from a regional entity whose interests have a lot of overlap with PRTPO's interest. And so I've listed at the bottom of the memo 3 people who maybe would be good candidates. And I think I would even refine that further and say, I think if this group were interested, hearing either from Karen Affeld, the executive director of the North Olympic Development Council, or from Miranda Berger, who is head of programs for Olympic Community of Health. Either one of those would be a very, very engaging 20-minute look at how a different regional entity with a lot of transportation implications is what they're working on, and opportunities for collaboration. And I think the world of both of them. The one thing I will say about Olympic Community of Health, that is the RTPO equivalent of Health and Human Services agencies established by the legislature, and Olympic Community of Health is Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap counties. So it's 3 of our 4 counties. Mason is part of the Mason, Lewis, Thurston, ACH, Accountable Community of Health. But I attended a meeting that they had on July 31st because I hadn't been up the 101 corridor in a long time, and I was itching to get up there. And there were 62 people in attendance, and I was the only person there having anything whatsoever to do with transportation. And the underlying issue that they all deal with, whether it's dealing with the opioid crisis or emergency access to health, or you name the social service area of interest. And the thing underpinning it all is, how do they get their clients and their patients to wherever it is that they need to go? Transportation ends up being the #1 common thread that they all struggle with. So I just left there. I don't know what the linkage is in the future between our two sort of worlds, but I mean, it's going to come up in the HSTP, but that could be a very interesting to hear what they're doing, and the Olympic Connect program that they're about to deploy. So either one of them would be fabulous. And NODC just got $35 million federal recompete grant, which again is about the strong economy and how transportation underpins those strong economies. Is it's just, you can't avoid it. So if you all have some feelings about either one of those two, I would love to reach out to either of them and see if they're available, and get them on the agenda. And then otherwise, just your thoughts on the day.
Thank you, Tara. I see Mike.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, I think Karen from NODC just lost a pretty key staff member, so her bandwidth might be pretty low right now, just an FYI. I was the chair of that recompete grant coalition. So, but OCH I think would be perfect. But if Karen doesn't have the bandwidth, I can also step in and do a presentation on recompete.
Thank you. There are a few questions. It's on page 102 in the packet about lunch. I think absent a better plan, it's probably bring your own lunch, and we'll have a lunch break and time to eat in the Red Cedar Hall or the grounds around. There's no hybrid meeting, so if you're waiting on the Zoom link in October, you're making a big mistake. Just come to Red Cedar Hall. Don't worry about being let in and panelist IDs not working. And as Sarah said, we are hoping to have a forum at the beginning of the day for action items that we need to take. But we plan to make the day worthwhile being there in person. This will be the first time in over 4 years, I think, for us to be in person as a group. We used to drive like all the way to the airport or the Mason service building, and that seems regular now. And now it's like, oh my gosh, are we really going to drive 2 hours and see each other in person? We'll make it worth it. Any other comments, questions about October 18th? She's now on everybody's calendar. And note the field trip too. The meeting's officially 10 to 3 with an optional field trip right nearby after 3.
We're talking about those fish passage projects. I think Wendy's found one, and if you've never walked the ODT through there, and it's Squim Bay, not Discovery Bay, apologies, but if you've never walked the Discovery Trail through there, it's just beautiful. And again, there's the native museum and all right next door too. That's worth sticking your nose in.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is the update on the Puget Sound to Pacific Trail project. Is this you, Sarah?
No, this is not. I was asked to add this. Wendy, do you want to give an update on this? This was just let folks know about the trip that went, apparently, so you all know that a consortium applied for, a consortium applied for a RAISE grant to do trail planning for the Puget Sound and Pacific Trail project. And apparently a small group of them, they were successful, and a small group of them were flown back to DC just recently to meet with legislators. And I was asked to put this on the agenda so they could give the
Sarah,
board.
you're winging it, but Wendy's ready to go.
Yay. Oh, there we go. Good. I couldn't find you there. Thank you.
Thanks for filling the gap. No, thank you. No, I'm sorry that I'm the only one here, because it's sort of ironic that Jamestown Slalom Tribe is not part of the P2SP consortium, but we were also invited as one of the main Olympic Discovery Trail stewards. The trip was so successful. It was sort of touch and go because Patty Murray was moving her dates around, and other federal directors were being sought after. But so how the Rails to Trails people filled all the interstitial time was to bring other Raise Grant Trail consortiums together, as well as the American Hiking Association, and also another FHWA recreational trails program guru. And they sat us down and told us all the bumps in the road and how we could move forward in spite of the delay on the race grant. When we did meet with Derek Kilmer, it was great. He had a lot of time for us. And it was also unfortunate that his lead staff we found out they were leaving him, sort of jumping ship early. And as a result, we learned that the Dungeness River Historic Trust Bridge that is having major structural issues is on Derek Kilmer's community-funded earmark list. And so that was the great, let's go out for a drink and cheers. But the other side of the coin is that we would like to have this project be in the Senate appropriations list as well. And so there's more work to be done. And being with the Rails to Trails Consortium, Rails to Trails Conservancy staff members, they did bolster us in many different ways, from understanding federal regulations to knowing who to rely on in Washington, D.C. if we want to follow up. So yes, I think that the group was small and very productive. And we were there during the Netanyahu riots, and we just finished up and we're going our own separate ways just when things all broke loose. We all came back safe and sound with greater knowledge of how you go and do this type of work at different times of the year, dependent on the congressional calendar. So I think we made some inroads, and I think if Steve Gray was here, he would say that it was great to have the race grant sitting on his desk just in the nick of time before he jumped on that airplane. So we finally made it through that 1 year mark of both the tribe and its race grant. It's now signed, and I know that the signatures on the race grant is going through its rotation, and hopefully it will all be cinched tight and ready to start spending money within the month.
Thank you for the update, Wendy. Any questions or comments? Well, that moves us right into public comment, followed by our PRTPO member updates. So I just want to check if there's anyone here from the public, not from a PRTPO member organization. I don't think there is. And Ed, you're saying nobody's in the room there in Bremerton. PRTPO HQ is empty. And so that is the end of public comment. Moving on to member updates. Who wants to give an update? I'll say something. I think we've had some discussion in the past about discontinuing the panel feature of Zoom. And after today, I think we should do that. The risk is that it makes us more susceptible to public Zoom bombing. We're very rarely have a member of the public, and I don't think we've ever had an issue with a public comment going awry or a member of public kind of sabotaging our meeting in some way that disrupts the business of the meeting. So I think it's worth us not blowing up our own meeting as we did at the beginning of this one, to just discontinue that webinar feature and just have it be a simple Zoom link, probably with a waiting room to make sure there is that filtering ability if needed. But otherwise, that's kind of the direction that I would prefer to go in. Feel free to comment to me or Thera if you disagree with that. But that's, I think, just an administrative back end to make sure we can have functional meetings. And thanks to everybody for your patience. I definitely was thinking, boy, if I wasn't sharing this meeting, I don't know if I'd have stick around. So I was glad to see so many people when I got into the meeting. Let's see, one other comment, I guess, while I have the floor is we discussed the Climate Commitment Act, which is up for basically repeal this November by an initiative. Cities and counties and local governments are prohibited from using public funds for candidate campaigns, but if one follows the proper procedure, and I'll put a link to MSRC's page on this, it is possible to take a position as a local government in Washington State on a measure that goes onto the ballot. So that is something to consider because it is a measure that definitely affects the work that we do and our ability to effectively do what we do in the future. I'll put that link in, and I see John.
Thank you, Lindsay, for bringing that up. And there's another issue that is permissible, and that is you are allowed to provide information on an initiative or ballot, but it has to be information only. You can't take, trying to suggest people should vote for or against or anything else, but you can inform the community of what the impacts to your jurisdiction would be if the initiative is successful.
Thank you, John. And that does not require really any action by the governing body, as opposed to taking a position on it does. Other member updates. What else is going on?
Did I mention the state transit roadie? Oh, I think I did mention that. Okay.
How many cones were smashed? Not by Kitsap Transit buses, of course.
Probably thousands by other agencies, except for Mason and Transit. They did extremely well, but there was all of the transits pretty much around the state.
John, aren't your operators, they're not even in their own regular buses, right? They come in from outside the area, don't they? And then they have to use the buses that are provided to them. So they don't even have that benefit of like, this is my seat that I've sat in for the last, I've driven this coach for the last 14 years. They're popping into a different bus, aren't they?
That's correct. The host agency the agency that hosts the rodeo provides the equipment, but it is similar, 35-foot, 40-foot cutaways. But it is a different vehicle than what they normally drive on a daily basis.
Thank you. I see Kate.
Yeah, just want to let people know, and some of you would be familiar with this, but the Association of Counties, I believe, has been working with the Association of Washington Cities, as well as many of our county engineers and public works departments to talk about some potential legislative efforts for the session starting in January next year. And they've come up with some maybe not new ideas, but we haven't talked about them for a while. Things like changing the councilmanic authorities for transportation benefit districts, adding I'm not sure what the mechanism is actually called, but basically adding a fee onto deliveries that are happening to destinations. For example, like a 25% fee associated with Amazon deliveries, all for a more sustainable funding revenue model for cities and counties. So just encourage anyone who's interested or has an opinion about those to be in touch with their representatives to AWC or WASAC or their county engineers.
Thank you, Kate. Any other member updates? All right, well, thank you all for a very productive meeting. Thanks for making this happen. We will not be on Zoom next time on October 18th. We will be in person at the Jamestown Tribes Red Cedar Hall. I hope to see everybody there. Kate, I'm assuming that's a vestigial hand that you still have up.
It is,
and all right, so with that, we are adjourned.